That outlaw ran his massive drug conspiracy from right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Perloin smuggled more than 300,000 pounds worth of marijuana into the U.S. The street value on those drugs approached $1 billion, and most of his pot slipped right underneath one of America's most famous landmarks, the Golden Gate Bridge. Give me an idea of how much money was coming in to your marijuana smuggling operations every year.
About $50 million.
Perloin's massive operation provides a vivid snapshot of the marijuana business during a bygone era. It was the 1970s and 80s. Raiders of the Lost Ark was the big movie. The San Francisco 49ers were well on their way to establishing a football dynasty, and Bruce Perloin was smuggling hundreds of tons of marijuana right under the noses of federal authorities. Perloin recruited a small navy, hiring boat captains and their fishing vessels from the nearby fleet anchored at the Northern California town of Moss Landing, which had been hit by hard times.
They were fishermen until I came along and gave them a more lucrative business enterprise. They'd much rather fish for marijuana than fish for fish. It was way more lucrative and more fun.
It's not like you're out in the middle of nowhere here.
No, in fact, when our boats came in, they were looking like fishermen coming back from a fishing trip, getting ready to come into port.
But
we had marijuana secretly on board. We were very sneaky.
So this boat right here, this is obviously not one of the boats that you used, but how much marijuana could you put on a boat like that?
Based on the size of the hole, you could put between 60 and 80 to 100,000 pounds in a boat like this.
So how much money are we talking?
30 million.
While Perloin was raking in the cash, FBI agents at the San Francisco field office were startled by a sudden jump in the amount of pot on the street. This was the man assigned to the case, Special Agent Chuck Ladding.
We knew that there was marijuana coming in. We knew it was on the street. We knew somebody was bringing it in. We had no idea who it was or where it was.
But Ladding did know this person was smuggling in enormous amounts of pot.
He was making $1 million a month. No question in my mind.
Perloin's marijuana supply came mostly from South America. One by one, he sent his fishing boats to a tiny village near the town of Jorada in Colombia. The marijuana was flown in by Perloin's Colombian partners in large bales from the country's pot-growing region hundreds of miles away.
They would load it onto planes, fly it over 3 mountain ranges, and drop it onto the west coast of Colombia, where it would be gathered and stored by a village.
Once Perloin's boats loaded up in Colombia, they set sail back to the San Francisco Bay. 3 weeks later, they arrived, filled with tons of pot, prepared to pass under the Golden Gate Bridge.
This is the time. If they're going to bust you, this is when they're going to bust you. Everybody's on full alert. It's the moment of truth.
Perloin even purchased his own pier to offload his drugs. We visited what's left of it. How long did it take you to offload your boat?
We could offload a boat and fill 2 truckfuls of marijuana and get the trucks off the dock and the boat reloaded, fueled, and gone in 57 minutes, less than 1 hour.
How did Perloin select the crowded maritime harbor of San Francisco Bay to offload his drugs? He did what any self-respecting executive would do. He hired a research firm.
I told them I was writing a book on smuggling. They compiled this entire research project for me. And what I found is that where most of the busts occurred were up in Coos Bay, Oregon, or down in San Diego, the two borders, the border of Canada and the border of Mexico. So that's when I knew to look in a place like San Francisco, because that's where there was no heat. San Francisco Bay was wide open.
With Perloin's operation in full gear, Chuck Ladding's FBI team was starting to zero in.
He was really big. He was, at the time, the largest that we were aware of in the FBI, by far.
This is almost exactly where the boats came in, right here. Maybe another 200 yards that way.
The smuggling scheme was run like a Fortune 500 company, with Perloin as CEO.
In 1980 alone, I spent $500,000 every week, the entire year.
On the business?
Paying for the marijuana itself, buying houses for stash houses, buying speedboats, buying new trucks, finding new docks, always making your business more and more and more sophisticated and expanding more and more.
Okay, so you've got $50 million going in and out of this business.
That I need to deal with somehow.
That you need to deal with.
You create an entire business on just what to do with the cash. So we had lawyers flying money to the Cayman Islands all the time for us.
You can't take more than $10,000 in cash out of the country. Of course, here I am talking to the king of marijuana smuggling. I'm sure you figured out a way to get those hundreds out of the country, too.
In those days, everybody was going to the Cayman Islands with suitcases full of money. They didn't care.
Perlowan's West Coast operation would thrive for 4 years, but the beginning of the end came when FBI agent Ladding got a phone call. It was another agent in Mendocino County who'd been given a notebook found at a local Denny's.
The agent said, we've got this notebook, and it is full of information on marijuana smuggling.
The notebook that Perlowan left behind at a Denny's restaurant became his undoing. It provided investigators with a breakdown of his entire organization.
The book was the key to everything we found. Even had financial reports in it. Couldn't imagine that anybody who was somewhat competent running an organization would walk away and leave their most prized possession sitting in a booth at Denny's.
The evidence helped send Perlowan to federal prison for 9 years, one of 50 convictions in the case.
I'm really glad that I arrested him. I just wasn't happy he got out.
Perlowan's smuggling routes have long since dried up. Chuck Ladding is retired, and Bruce Perlowan, who was released from prison in 1991, says he's moved on to other, more legitimate endeavors. Knowing what you know now, knowing that you went to prison for 9 years as a result of this, would you do it again?
My gut reaction is yes. I would live my life exactly the way I lived it. It was a lot of fun.